Welcome to this video. This is the second video about round 4 of Tata Steel 2013. Yesterday I presented the game Aronian against Anand, one of the best games probably of Anand's career, winning quickly and in brilliant style against the world number 3 Aronian. But this round 4 was a very spectacular round with some very interesting games, so I decided to make a second video going through the other games and have a closer look at them. I'll start with the, in comparison, probably least interesting game. This is Giri against Leco. Can go through this really quickly. We had a Nimzo Indian, and Giri played Queen C2, which is known as the classical line. It gives
check.
Pretty unusual move order. It gives white the bishop pair without damaging the pawn structure, but it loses time with the queen. And this line that Leco chooses here with taking on c4 is a very modern line designed to win more time on the queen. Now white has made 1, 2, 3 queen moves already and hasn't done anything yet for his kingside development, preparing castling, and black will probably gain another tempo with bishop a6. This is popular recently for black. Bishop g5, bishop a6, queen a4, and here black has a choice. He can go queen d7 as Leco played, or he can also play c5, which is also an interesting way to play, allowing this somewhat damaged pawn structure, but black has ideas for counterplay. In the game, there's sorry. So sometimes I just hit this button going forward 5 moves. Queen d7 was played, which is fairly logical, winning another tempo on the queen. So if white would take, it would speed up black development even further. But it's questionable if white has a better move. Where should the queen go? So he took it, and nothing much was happening. The only slightly interesting moment was exactly here, where I just expected black to take on f1. What he didn't do, he played the interesting bishop to b7, not getting rid of the bishop pair, but bishop b7 controls the light squares. This is probably the idea, and you get the bishop back anyway with attacking the g5 bishop. We will see what I'm talking about, like this, and black actually managed to, with the help of g5, to exchange this bishop. And now important move a6 to control b5. Yeah, now black is perfectly safe. The only thing he needs to be aware of is the square c6, that no piece lands there, and it's really just a big exchange now coming. And yeah, you don't need to be rated 2700 to draw this game. Really? e5? This really was played? I can't believe this.
Check.
This is some glitch on ICC. e5 certainly wasn't played. Just a draw here. g3 would be normal, and it's simply dead equal. Alright, so this was more like getting it complete. This game wasn't so interesting. So let's have a look at Nakamura against Karjakin next. Naka going d4, he mixes his openings up, and we get a Queen's Indian, which was really predictable. Karjakin has got a relatively narrow opening repertoire for such a world-class player. He plays the Nimzo and the Queen's Indian, and doesn't really vary that much. Bishop a6, knight d2. Yeah, white has a wide range of opportunities. We get a fairly standard looking position, but knight b3 was was a bit unusual, from at least for my eye. Yeah, we have this typical hanging pawn formation. At least we have it now. I just forward a couple of moves. White will at some point capture on d5, and then we get these two so-called hanging pawns. And white has a pretty interesting setup against those pawns, involving the knight on b3, which allows queen a5 or knight a5. And this is annoying, because those pieces are somewhat loose on the queen side. And we see in the following moves, yeah, this is also interesting. He exchanged on f6 and now intends to reroute the knight to e3 to put pressure on d5, not on d6. We'll see what I'm talking about. Queen a5. Yeah, also utilizing the square. Black, black cannot really exchange. The knight on a5 would be really super annoying. So queen d7, attacking this this piece, and now it dropped back to e3. And now we see that white has some real pressure on d5. If black plays d4, he would make this pawn backward and also give away the c4 square. So it's not so easy for black. Probably he's not in big trouble, but it's a slightly annoying pressure on these pawns. And one idea in this position would be this move c4, which sometimes looks a bit strange, but it has a concrete idea. Knight d4, and then my idea would be to play bishop to g5, trying to damage the pawn structure or provoke white in doing moves that he really doesn't want to do, like f4, for example. I'm not 100% sure. I probably would prefer white anyway, but it's an idea at least. In the game, he played d4, which is a move that you certainly need to be very cautious with, as it concedes some squares to white. We had the exchange here, and now Nakamura didn't even go to c4. He played knight to f5, which is even stronger, attacking this this piece and threatening to take their winning a piece, as the queen also needs to watch the a6 knight. And it's surprisingly difficult to coordinate black's pieces here to avoid the loss of a pawn. In fact, in the game he immediately gave a pawn with this rook move, and it's very difficult to really avoid this. I actually don't know how to do it. White has numerous ways to increase. So he has got rook c4 and similar. Maybe this d4 move wasn't so great at the end. This seems like a tricky position for black. Okay, he went in the game rook to e8.
Check.
And now after this you need to take with the rook, as the queen must watch the knight. And now simply c5 is gone. White has won a pawn.
Check.
Now covering the e-pawn. And white has certainly a pretty substantial advantage, but it's not completely trivial, as black is putting some pressure on the c2 pawn. He maybe can activate the queen. It's probably not a clear-cut win, but white is certainly much better. We see that Nakamura consolidated the position and tried to get some pressure on d4. Yeah, this is debatable, as it gives black a pass pawn, but of course it also gives white this 4 against 3 majority, trying to advance it. And the queen is a notoriously bad blockader, but in fact it's not so terrible here. The thing is, in this position black is controlling the c file and always will have a little bit of counterplay. As it turned out, don't want to analyze this so deeply, it's there are many alternatives along the way. I want to get to one very instructive point. Yeah, white opened this up, and now black's king is exposed. yeah, you cannot go d3 because of queen
Check.
d7 and this kind of things coming. So black needs to pin the rook. And now we get a queen endgame with white having an extra pawn. But very important is to note that in queen endgames, of course, extra pawns are very nice, but in queen endgames, very important is to have a far advanced pass pawn. Quite often, the side with being a pawn down, but having a great pass pawn advanced is even better. And we see in the game that Karjakin has this chance here with his d pawn, and white has the extra pawn. He's got 3 against 2 here, and 2 against 1 on the queen side, but there's no pass pawn. And this means that white always needs to be cautious, as this pawn is pretty quick in advancing. We see that Nakamura is entering here with the queen, and now this is very important and a move that I want to show. It's not 100% clear that this is mathematically, in terms of a computer, the correct move, but it is a very good human move, activating here the pawn further and advancing it to get counterplay. You need to push the passed pawn. This is absolutely essential. And in fact, I believe if you look at this, Nakamura now grabbed it, and here, in fact, he immediately stumbled and allowed a draw. But the funny thing is, if you take now here and give this to the computer, it gives white a pretty big plus. But it's very, very difficult to see how white should win this game. Actually, he's got all these extra pawns, but black is playing just d2 or queen c2 and d2 and tries to promote. And how do you prevent this? I'm not sure, and I would need much more time to analyze if this is really a win. Nakamura, in the interview, the brief interview after the game, also stated he wasn't 100% sure if it was winning or not. Maybe it is, but it's difficult. I mean, black just goes somewhere. White cannot exchange queens or something, and it's simply the problem of this pawn. Maybe it is a draw anyway. I'm not sure. You cannot trust the computer. It tells you +2, but this just means there are extra pawns, and it doesn't see an immediate draw. If the only thing that the computer is doing for 30 moves is checking and makes no progress, then this +2 is worthless. I'm not sure. My feeling is it might be a draw. In the game, he played f5, and now it's really a mathematical draw. As d2, there's the immediate threat, and now white needs to give a perpetual, which he did. So yeah, he made it relatively easy for black, but maybe it was a draw anyway. It's not 100% sure. I would need to invest much more time to figure this out. You cannot trust the comp. You need to go much deeper. I didn't have the time. My suspicion is draw, but I wouldn't bet a house on it. That I don't own, actually. Okay, so this was a pretty interesting draw. And what else did we have? We have Caruana against Ivan Sokolov, which I could go through briefly. This was Ruy Lopez, and of course Sokolov is one of the biggest expert of 1e4, 1e5 from the black side. He also wrote a book, the Ruy Lopez Revisited, which is heavily recommended for any e5 player, as it contains so many interesting ideas. Sokolov is the man to watch for e4, e5 as black. He plays all kinds of lines, and here he comes up with the Archangelsk variation, the Archangel variation. I'm pretty unsure about the name in English, actually. I think it's called really the Archangel, but it is named after the Russian region Arkhangelsk. It doesn't have anything to do with angels. Okay, well, bishop b7, and Caruana just goes for the conservative line d3. There are many sharp options here, c3, rook e1, but just d3. And I mentioned in a previous video that black needs to be cautious with putting a bishop on b7 if white is putting up this this pawn formation. Yeah, now we have exactly that, but of course it's a difference. In the other line, the bishop was only 7, where bishop b7 is a problem. Here, Sokolov manages to get this bishop out. Still, if we continue a couple of moves, I would much prefer white in this position. He looks more active, and a problem is this bishop. Black has yeah, no real option other than trading, and we'll see what happens. White threatened on h6. In the long run, black needs to trade this, as d4 was threatened, and then you would have a really terrible bishop on a7. So you need to take this, and now we have this structure with the half-open f-file, and possibilities of this. Maybe not exactly this route, h4 is covered, but I don't like this position so much. Black doesn't have a real role for this b7 bishop, and white has the f-file open. I don't really like it. I think Sokolov was a bit unfortunate with his opening choice here. It looks already a bit tricky for black. He tried to stay solid in the center, but white now was able to play d4 even, and now he has a big center and black has no real counterplay. I think Caruana did a very good job here. I'm not so sure where the mistake was in the opening. I'm not sure. Maybe somewhere around here. Black needs to do something else. But the games didn't look too great to me. This line is a bit out of fashion. People usually go bishop c5 nowadays and keep the options open for this c8 bishop. Yeah, well, in the game after 97, Caruana got a great position. Simply the center, the b3 pawn, it was just bad. This is a tactical trick. Black gets the piece back now, but white has, of course, a great center, and just went for this pawn and won it. Okay, black tries to struggle with tactics, but now comes the mentioned other idea, the knight on f5, and this is always an issue if you have played h6. You cannot really get rid of such a knight. Without h6, well, g6 would weaken the position, but at least it wouldn't give away the h6 pawn, and here black is just toast. d6 is also hanging. So he struggled on for a bit, but for a player of Caruana's abilities, it was pretty easy, I think, to win this. d6 is so weak, and here white is a couple of pawns up, I think 2 pawns, and still has the activity with e4. And at the end here, he regrouped the pieces to get a kingside attack. Here there's just rook h5 and rook coming on the h-file, and black cannot defend against this. Yeah, I think probably the problem of the root of all the problems was somewhere in the opening, where black really got into a passive position. And I'm really not sure. I dislike this whole setup a bit with bishop b7 and committing this bishop early to this square. Black doesn't seem to have adequate counterplay here. Not 100% sure about the theory, but it doesn't look good. So what else was there? We had also Van Wely against Evan Lamy, the Dutch duel. Both players certainly looking for a point, I would say. You need to win somewhere, and the best chances against against the compatriots in this case. Okay, so the trump surprise from Van Wely here obviously has prepared a couple of offbeat lines, at least offbeat, for his repertoire to surprise the opponents. Lamy went for c5. Of course, black has a big choice here. c5 is an interesting sharp option. White captured and played d5, which has the idea to make some use of black's somewhat weakened structure. We see what happens. Queen b6, black immediately tries to get play on the dark squares, which have been weakened, of course. Queen c1, f5, and c4. Yeah, white is basically just intending knight c3 and maybe getting a knight to f4, and keep black's pawns somewhat inflexible, playing against the bishops to not allow them too much activity. Especially c8 bishop is an issue for black, as it always we can advance a couple of moves like this. This bishop always bites on granite against this f5 pawn, and this is actually something that black is not easy. Black cannot easily avoid. If you wouldn't play f5, you had the pawn back on f6, then the g7 bishop is looking extremely stupid. So white tries to give up the bishop pair, but inflict some structural damage. This is also why he goes with the knight to f4. This has this idea, and also having a look at the e6 square that black cannot easily play e6. Yeah, we have a couple of more moves, and now an interesting decision to take on c3. I would be reluctant to do that. I love my bishops, but probably it's not so bad. The idea is also just open the g file and damage white's structure a bit in return. So c4 is a weakness, of course. He now continued with e6, covering this. Of course, it was hanging, so this was something that black needed to take care of anyway. And now we have taking and e4. White opens up the position. And now knight g5. And now we actually already have one critical moment of this game, and I think Lamy went wrong here. White has the simple threat knight to f7, and of course black needs to react in some way. And he now came up with an exchange sacrifice, which probably falls short. What he could do is just cover f7 with, let's say, here, and after taking on h7, if white would do that, I mean it's the move that is most principled after you went knight g5. Then black can try a move like rook here, intending, let's say, knight g5, rook g7, and then c4 is still hanging. Black would have counterplay anyway with the open files on the king side. All this can be used for the rooks. So I think this was an option. What he did was something else, an interesting idea, but I'm not sure that it's really working. He played this, and now the rook is hanging and d6 is hanging, and he decided to sacrifice the exchange by capturing on c4. Yeah, but white grabbed it. No, not much else to do. Queen e2. The question is, does black have enough here? Probably not. If you look at the game, I don't really see an obvious improvement after a couple of moves, and the computer also doesn't like it. It's probably you don't have enough activity on the king side, and the structural advantage is not so great for black. I mean, he's got one pawn and a compact structure, but white isn't bad anyway, and he's got a pretty good bishop. So probably this is not really a correct sacrifice. Attacking c5, and this is also a move you don't really love to make. Yeah, when Wely is really playing the toughest moves, he just captures the pawn. Don't need to be afraid here. The h-file is not so dangerous, and the pawn is important, securing yourself two connected passes. So if the queens are off, you will win automatically. And I think he did a good job here, not allowing too much. White had always some advantage. And yeah, the problem is white even has attacking chances, so you could wonder why is black even attempting to exchange queens, but the problem is white easily could get a kingside attack, or not, this is nonsense, attack on the king, yeah, not on the king side, let's say rook b1. Yeah, probably I still wouldn't have offered the queen trade, but this is pretty much over. White king now advances, and he pushes the pawns. Yeah, black has only this passed pawn, and white has 2 connected ones, so this is just too much. It's pretty simple technical task.
Check.
Yeah, and here the g7 threat decided. If black would take here, then white can take here, and black has no way to prevent rook h8. It's probably even a forced mate here. Yeah, so let's have a look quickly at this point. Yeah, probably here this exchange sack wasn't sufficient. I really don't think it's enough. It's playable maybe, but it's not enough to get full compensation. And after white grabbed even h7, it simply was too much in terms of material. Alright, so we had also the Chinese duel, Wang Hao against Hou Yifan, and Wang Hao playing d4, and we get a Nimzo Indian with e3. Yeah, in fact we get the absolute main line of the e3 Rubinstein system with a3, the classical main line back from the 50s. Nowadays people very often prefer these structures, the Karpov line, the isolated pawn positions. But knight c6 is the absolute classical line from the 50s. a3 takes, and now queen c7. Also d takes c4 is possible. I don't want to make a real deep theoretical review here. This would take ages. There have been books written about this position with yeah, tons of pages. So bishop b2, which looks a bit funny. I must admit that looks a bit funny to put the bishop here, but in the long run the bishop will get into play, and this is simply a matter of time. After for instance black captures on c4 at some point, then later with e4 you can activate the bishop, and frankly speaking it doesn't have another square. e4 is not easy to accomplish without black committing first. Let's see what happens. Black plays rook e8, and this is a good interesting plan. We'll see. This was the idea, getting e5 in, and also preparing this way to get the bishop developed. h3, yeah, this pin is annoying. Bishop g4, this is why white prevents it. And a6, rook d1, b5, bishop a2, and e4. Yeah, there have been lots of alternatives along the way. I want to get to a critical position. Yeah, and this is exactly now. Here black played a very natural looking move, bishop e6, and it's possible that this is actually yeah, a mistake. Hard to believe really, but it seems that white gets some advantage after this. There were alternatives. Black could even think about this move. You need to be cautious with closing the queen side, because it potentially gives white a very strong center. If you imagine something like this, bishop b1 and f3, and if black would need to take, white would have a real pawn roller in the center. It still was interesting. I don't think it can be refuted immediately. I would prefer white probably after f3, but it was an alternative. And the thing is, bishop e6 runs into tactical problems. Maybe it's still playable, but it gets tricky for black. We'll see what happens. And the fun move is d5. This is interesting. White opens up the position in a tactical manner and gives his bishops lots of possibilities. She now took with the knight. If black would take with the bishop, white would play c4, and this was the idea. Look at this. The bishop formally a strangely positioned piece gets into life and will inflict a damage on black's pawn structure. If you would take, have a look at this. And here white has excellent play, really. Black's pawn structure is a complete mess, and he's got ideas like this, for example, or queen g4 check, rook d7, something like this. Here black is in some trouble. White has great compensation, at least. And yeah, this is why bishop d5 is probably not so great. And she played knight d5, and this had this consequence: c4 takes, and now knight takes. And here we see that this bishop, as mentioned, can get strong, and it is a strong piece now. White will get this back probably, and has an open position with two bishops going down the board. She decided to play c3, which is probably a good idea to simplify the position a bit and get pieces off the board before white puts even more pressure on the king side. So we had a couple of exchanges. Still, at the end, white has the far better minor piece. This knight is simply not a great piece on e6. It doesn't have a good post where it is securely placed. One idea could be this, but it's really slow to get it on a square where it is protected. But I don't think it helps too much. Here, black's defense is really a thankless task. Also a slight weakness here. And yeah, white slowly increased the pressure. And it's hard to tell where really the decisive mistake was, must say. If you look at this, just a second, I had something prepared. Queen c4. I think around here this was all pretty logical in defense. Black was simply keeping her position together. But in time trouble there were some inaccuracies. Yeah, in this position white actually just should take c5. What he did is he played king h2, and here Hou Yifan had a chance for counterplay, which she didn't really grab. One move later actually, she played rook b6, bishop moves, and now black probably should try knight to h4, which gets some play against g2. It could continue this way. Takes,
check,
takes, and now rook e4. And here black has some counterplay at least. It's still probably problematic, but okay, it is some play. At least it threatens rook g6, and maybe you have possibilities to somehow get rid of the a3 pawn, like this here. And if you get rid of this pawn, then you always have options to get some 3 against 4 on the king side, and try to draw some rook endgame or whatever. Let's say exchange one pair of rooks, get rid of the bishop, very difficult, but then you have drawing chances. In the game, she played rook c6, and after a couple of more moves, Wang Hao realized this advantage, especially after e4. Then the knight is completely out of places to go. And, yeah, and material check losses were unavoidable. Yeah, I think the most interesting moment really was this d5 move, which opened up the position, and after this it was really difficult for black to defend this position. Really not a task he would like to perform against some world-class player. Alright, and now we've got one game left, and this was probably the most interesting one, besides of course the Aronian game that I did yesterday. This is yeah, Magnus, of course, the world #1, playing against Harikrishna. Both players were on +1, so important also for the overall standing. And what opening do we get? The Rue Lopez, the Giucopiano or the Scotch. No, we get the Ponziani opening, which is probably never been played by a 2700 player ever. Maybe someone can look this up, but this is really obscure, the Ponziani. In fact, it goes so far that even strong grandmasters have labeled this as a bad or incorrect opening. It probably shouldn't be labeled so badly. It's probably equal, but yeah, it's a shame that Harikrishna now played knight f6, which has a solid reputation against c3, but the theoretically testing move is actually d5, and I would be very curious to see what Magnus would have played. He's obviously knowing what he's doing, so he had some idea prepared. After d5, white probably would play queen a4, this is the main move, and then black has various ideas sacrificing material, but he can just play f6. This was actually my recommendation in the e4 e5 repertoire series, where I made a dedicated video on the Ponziani, actually never suspecting that it would crop up on the board in some high level game. Alright, Harikrishna played knight f6. We probably will never learn what Magnus had intended after d5. Here d4, and now a surprise, Harikrishna now went d5. Obviously he didn't expect this opening, so he was probably making things up as he went along. Knight e4 is the main move here, once you played knight f6, and then d5, knight e7, knight e5. And arguably this could be slightly better for white, knight g6, and then queen e2. This is how this is played, but it's also nothing spectacular for white. But certainly a position that Magnus probably was comfortable with playing. Okay, d5, and now bishop b5, and now we get a position which is very similar to a position from the Italian game, or the two knights. In fact, it is almost identical, but white has the extra move c3. This is because in the Italian game, or the two knights, he goes to bishop c4 b5. If you like, I can put this on the board. What I'm talking about is this line. Memorize this position. This is the game, and see, it's identical, but white has c3 as an extra move, and this is enough to get white a little bit of an advantage. We will see why this is. First you would think, okay, c3 is this really useful, but it is. We see why. White takes down, everything very normal. And c3 is a useful move in this position, because the thing that white would like to achieve in an ideal world is to prevent black from going c5 and get some peace on c5. Therefore b4 is a fairly typical move that white would like to make. Here black played knight to c5 back, but just to show what I'm talking about, if black would take and now would play some passive move that didn't really fit into the position, let's say h6. Okay, it doesn't make much sense, but just to show the idea, what white would like to do is to get something like b4, knight b3, bishop c5, and at the end have the knight on d4 or c5 against the stupid looking bishop on d7, and therefore c3 is a useful move. Magnus said in the interview after the game that he suspected white would have a slight advantage with c3 being the extra move, and he probably is right about that. It looks like like a comfortable position for white. With b4, knight back to b7, and f4. Yeah, grabbing space. White has this idea of further advancing. Yeah, here black had more than one idea. Instead of a5, he also had the option of playing c5, which looked fairly logical to me, actually, to get rid of this this double pawn. A possible continuation could be taking. Knight takes and queen f3, attacking d5, and after c6 white has the idea of going c4. Yeah, I think white is probably slightly better, really. This pawn duo here can be dangerous with f5 coming, and black is slightly worse probably. In the game a5 also makes sense, get rid of the a pawn, but now we see that Magnus is really a creative player. He's playing f5, and this is just a good move. If you look at the alternative, a3, the normal looking move before was hanging, then have a look at this. This is would be the simple way to go about this, and probably the way that most players would proceed. And here you probably have nothing. It's simply that the queen was distracted to the queen side, so it cannot really help with any initiative on the king side, and you've got this rook off the board. Probably it's around equal. Have a look what happened. He played f5, sacrificing this pawn, and it's very difficult to not take it, and probably black should take it. So this is what Harikrishna did. He just grabbed the pawn, and now queen g4. And now we see, okay, white has sacrificed the pawn, but he's got something going on the king side. A possible e6 is an idea, and also f6 is an idea. Of course, first the queen needs to go probably to g3 to get out of the pin here, but white has those two pawns and they are dangerous. Bishop h6, of course, is also a threat. So what did black do? He played bishop c3, attacking the rook. Oops, this was what I wanted to do, attacking the rook. And another idea could have been f6 here, to just stop the pawns, but this would lead to knight e6, and after takes, bishop back e6, we get a position which is actually fairly similar to the game, and in which white has a big compensation. Let's look what happened. I think Harikrishna really did a good job of defending this. Bishop c3, rook c1, attacking this, takes. So yeah, what is going on now? a2 is hanging, and yeah, he grabbed it. Probably again the right move. What else is there? What if black would play c5? This is an important question, as if white would capture on c5, then takes c6 is very good for him. a2 is still hanging, and there's queen b6 coming. It's a very unlucky diagonal here. This is actually good for black. So after after c5, white shouldn't take. This is a mistake, but he has a strong move, and this is e6. Very important. The idea being, after e6, if black captures now, then white has the cool move f6, putting the pawns to good use. g6, only move, it was made on g7, and now white can take. And this is amazingly good for white. At first I couldn't really, I was a bit skeptical, let's put it this way, because this pawn is dangerous, of course, but it also looks like it can easily get lost. But it doesn't seem to happen, and what white is also threatening is something like this, of course, utilizing this pawn on f6. Black is in big trouble, probably it's losing even. So c5 in this position wasn't an option, and if this isn't an option, what are you playing? Yeah, I think he did right. He took on a2, and with the idea of the following: e6 with the main thread, and now simply f6. And yeah, now we see a really great play coming. White is not at all interested in taking this bishop, of course. At the moment d2 is also hanging. If white would take now, then black would just capture here, and this isn't really what white was intending to do. He just played this move. And now have a look at black's pieces. Where should this bishop go? If you would go to c8, white can simply grab the pawn and has gotten one pawn back and now has an overwhelming position. I mean, just this move would pile up on the c file, on the c pawn also. So bishop to e8. It's a better move. You must protect it. And now white has sacrificed 2 pawns, but look at the huge bind that he has. He has got this amazing pawn on e6 supported by f5. The rook here has no square. The bishop has no square. It cannot go anywhere. And how is black supposed to untangle himself and try to do something with the 2 pawns? It's really tricky. And in fact, it seems like white has exactly enough compensation. If you analyze this a bit and use the computer checking out the various continuations, it turns out that probably white has enough compensation, but he's not winning or close to even winning. But the problem is that in a practical game, this is just terrible to play. You're just standing with back to the wall and need to defend all the time with black. So I think for a long time he did a really good job with defending, but it's not much fun, of course. Here it was an alternative to capture on f2, and I'm not sure. Maybe I would have done the following and lose as well. Okay, my idea would be to actually take here, and after capture, let's say here, to go g6, because simply I probably wouldn't have the patience to stay put all the time. Here it is a question: should white play g4 or should he take? In case of taking, which is probably interesting, he can utilize the long diagonal. But I think, just speaking for myself, I probably couldn't have standed to stay put so long. And this is probably, again, compensation for white. But it's hard to put a definite assessment on this. It was an alternative, at least for black. He decided to just stay and not change so much about the position. However, in this position, after bishop c5, bishop h5, which looks active, you want to make an active move, I understand really. Probably it's not the best because white wanted to go here anyway and now has this knight d4 c6 idea, which somehow is quite annoying for black. He needs to defend e8, which he did with the queen, and here queen a8. Here there was an alternative. In fact, there was one really cool line I wanted to show. Sorry. Here I asked myself, why not knight d4? And at first you think, okay, this is easy, right? Knight e4 and the big fork. In fact, this is not at all clear. White can play knight takes b5, knight takes c3, and now the cool move e7, attacking the rook, intending to capture it and winning the house. So black needs to move it. There's not much choice. Rook to f7, and then knight c7. And funny enough, you attack the queen, and this is such a funny piece configuration that white will promote. It's unavoidable, and the best that black can do is to capture here. Bishop takes, rook takes here, takes here, rook d2, and now after bishop to g4, rook d5, cd5, rook c7, bishop f5. We get to a drawish endgame, and it's possible that Carlsen even calculated this in the game. This was this move, knight d4. In the game, he went queen to e3. It's possible, really. He's capable of doing such things, and this puts the pressure on, keeps the pressure on. Black cannot really free himself. Queen a8, knight d4, and now he tried to relieve the pressure by exchanging with this pseudo sacrifice, and knight e4. Yeah, knight e4, forking both rooks. Looks very natural, and the idea of the sacrifice, but it could be that this was actually a mistake. Black had an alternative, maybe quite surprising alternative, with a knight c4, which just attacks the queen, and yeah, where should it go? Let's say queen c3, and then queen a7. This was the idea. The fun thing is that yeah, this rook is hanging, and takes. And now look at this rook. It doesn't have so many squares. c5 is controlled. Cannot go here. Cannot go here. And in fact, black even can spare one move, like rook a8, and then play bishop e8, trapping this rook. Bishop e8 immediately. If you look at this, white can answer with taking, and then the rook is in a bit of a problem here. But black can actually play, and this is very difficult to see beforehand, can play rook a8, and now this bishop e8 cannot really be prevented. The rook is in a way trapped here, and white doesn't have anything better than sacrificing it back on c4. Let's say something like this, and then
check.
Even this is possible. Oh no, sorry, rook f1, of course. Rook f1, rook a4, and we get to an end game, which is certainly should be okay for black. Of course, this is completely theoretical possibility, as there are humans playing over the board, and you need to assess this, and this is very difficult, of course. Harikrishna had about 4 minutes left, and his idea obviously was this knight e4. But after that, black is in some trouble, and this is becoming apparent rather quickly. Knight c6 takes, king takes, and now, yeah, white regained a pawn, so it's just one pawn now, and d5 is very weak, so white will get this back. And if you regain the 2 pawns and you maintain this strong bind on the position, white will be substantially better. It's still a tricky position, but white has a pretty big advantage now. So maybe
check.
Really knight c4, but this is really super difficult to see. And all in all, you must say that Carlsen's double pawn sacrifice was very strong, because it put black on such a defensive position that it's basically a question of time when you break down. It's so difficult to defend. The fun thing is, the only player I would say who is able to defend this as black as Carlsen himself, as he is such a great defender. Okay, king g3 after the check, rook e8, and yeah, and then h3. This is a very difficult, very important, not so difficult maybe, but very important move that often players don't appreciate so much. Those little moves that take away squares, it takes away the g4 square and prepares to secure the king on h2. So it's one of those little preparation moves that simply help white so much in winning the game. Without those little moves, you would have a much harder time to actually convert this. We see that white's king is pretty safe on h2. Just a couple of moves later, we see that white puts pressure on the c pawn, and wins the d-pawn as mentioned. Some regroupings, and it was certainly also an idea just to manage time control. Yeah, c7 also falls. Now white is even a pawn up. He has won the whole queen side, and now we see that king h2, how useful this this flight square was. Yeah, black could give a check on f4, but it's just one check. It doesn't continue. Let's say here, and black is out of checks. This queen controls all critical squares. So king h7, and now it's a matter of a couple of precise moves. Queen f2 is a strong little touch. It lets the knight hang, but queen takes b4 would be answered by queen g3, and there's no defense to the attack. For example, if black would play queen f8 to cover, there's the strong move rook f7, and black is busted like this.
Check.
Yeah, intending queen to f7, and black just loses. Yeah, he played rook g8, and a couple of moves later, white nicely coordinated his pieces.
Check.
Some checks coming, but this is very nice now. The knight possibly even going further towards the king, and here in a completely lost position now, Harikrishna made a final slight mistake, but okay, it's lost anyway. But this immediately clinches the game. Carlsen now has a nice tactical shot. If you like, you can try to solve this. Not too difficult. And the move is knight takes f6, and this is quite nice. He didn't allow this to play out on the board. He actually resigned with playing bishop c6, but knight f6 would be the move that would come now, with the nice touch queen takes d4.
Checkmate.
Rook takes f8 mate. Very cute mate with the knight and the rook taking away the squares. And of course, yeah, the queen is hanging, and it's a complete overload. I mean, where should black go? f8 needs to be covered as well. Yeah, so resigns was understandable in this position. Yeah, a great game, I think, by Carlsen, who really played very creatively to get black into a difficult position. He first sacrificed here the b pawn and then the a pawn, and he got a great bind on the position where black was forced to defend passively, and this really led to disaster with little time on the clock. It's simply not feasible to just look at the computer evaluation, which is probably around equal or maybe even slightly better for black. It's just not important. The problem is just think of playing this as black. Yeah, sometimes you need to just switch the board. Yeah, look at it from the defender and see you've got everything. Oops, you've got everything sitting on the back rank, and it's simply a terrible thing to imagine that you need to defend this. Yeah, it's simply a thankless prospect. It doesn't. It's not any fun. Yeah. Okay, I hope you liked the video, and I'll be back with round 5 probably on Thursday. This will feature Carlsen against Anand. I think Vichy's got white though, Anand Carlsen, and we can look forward to that. Yeah, cheers, and yeah, till tomorrow.